surgery. Maybe if it bothers him in the future or whatever, so it looks like he's gonna be able to escape that without having surgery and having, uh, the fragmentation in his arm removed at this time, so I think it's gonna stay there. I think one of the things with some of the ordinances I saw on there, my request would be, since we're obviously due to the unfortunate circumstances down 2 officers right now, is to be able to maybe hire one provisionally to get us through this interim period. I've rearranged the schedule to where, I've taken Officer Jones and Attila and moved them into Officer Dolly's slot on the schedule, to prevent any additional like overtime and nobody working shorthanded. So that's kind of where we're at with that. One of the things that I wanted to do, and I mentioned it to Mr. Frank, and he's in support of it, and I want the council to at least hear it, in honor of Scott Dolly and the sacrifice he made to the city of Nelsonville. I wanted to decommission his unit number, which was 308. There's some bumper stickers being made, there's some other things going around with, his unit number 308, and I just want people to, when they see that, to immediately designate that and think of Scott Dolly. Not to be confused to where it would never, when I say decommission, just essentially, retired that number to where no other officer will ever be assigned the unit 308 at Nelsonville again, just kind of in honor of Scott. And, I told his family that I was gonna mention that to council, and they thought that was a great idea.
Okay, a motion to decommission badge number 308.
Second.
I'm all for it, but I think after we do this tonight, maybe the next meeting we can do a resolution on it.
Absolutely, yes.
And that's really all I have, if anybody has any questions. It's obviously been a pretty tumultuous couple weeks going on. But again, I wanna thank the city. Mr. Frank's been exceptional, all the department heads, Jason, Harry, everybody's been great. And, you know, sometimes it takes, unfortunately, a tragic situation like we've had to recognize just how good the people and the residents of Nelsonville is. A lot of times we get caught up and focused on the negativity and the bad, but, in a situation like this, the city has certainly come together, and there's just been, I can't even begin to say the outpouring of support, that people has given us as a whole. So, you know, I'm gonna try to remind myself that next time I get a little disgruntled about this or that, because it's been great to see the community really coming together, and it lets you know what you're fighting for. So this city's definitely worth the effort and worth fighting for. And if there was any doubt in anybody's mind, times like this should definitely put that to rest.
Thank you,
So,
Chief.
thank you.
Thank you.
I call the roll on that. On that.
Mr. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
Ms. Grant? Yes. Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Ms. Jones? Yes. Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Mr. Barber, floor is yours. Chief Barber.
Thank you. Getting a little bit of a late start. We're in the middle of dive classes right now. Had to break away from that real quick. It's been a little while since we last updated. I still have some grants that are out there. Earlier we were awarded the Rocky Community Improvement Grant. That again was for medical supplies for fire department. We're still in the process, the last process anyways, for the FEMA grant. This will be for all new replacement fire hose and tack hose. We have tack hose and supply line for our trucks. As of the last council meeting, structured fire calls have tapered down to the normal amount of runs that we have. As of the last council update, we had a rash of intentional fires in the city. We're still currently in the investigative process, utilizing search warrants and working on the case. So far, we have not gotten anywhere on that yet. We're still in the investigative process. We have seen an increase in overdose calls since the last update, as well as an increase in EMS calls in the city. Earlier in the month, I had a meeting with Hocking College and the EMA office concerning the trails behind Hocking College campus. These trails are now getting put into the trail system for mapping with the county. So basically, when we have an issue on the trails, it's easier to find an individual on those trails. Right now, the trails, up until maybe 2 weeks ago, there was no mapping at all for the trail system. Matter of fact, the city manager was out with us on that last call. We were actually sharing our locations with one another through Facebook mapping. And that's how me and my other responders are finding each other. The Hocking River continues to see an increase in visitors. And that's one reason why we're in the training that we're in right now. Myself and a number of my firefighters are in open water dive classes right now, which will just transition us further into recovery and rescue diving. But this is the first step of that. And right now, we're advertising for firefighter testing for the city. We have, right now, part-time openings. So we're just in the advertising process, and that pretty much sums up my update tonight.
All right, anybody got any questions for Chief Barber?
Sounds pretty good.
I was gonna come in looking like Scuba Steve with fins on and the snorkel, get a good laugh, but
You've got time. Yeah.
if you
Thanks,
guys have any
sir.
questions, I'm gonna go get changed out, and we're gonna get back in the water.
All right. Thank you, Chief Barber.
Thanks, Chief.
Be careful. All right, now moving on to second readings. Second reading of 54-21.
An ordinance accepting donations from the Nelsonville Community Foundation Fund, the Rocky Community Improvement Fund, the Baird Brothers Company Foundation, and Chili Cook-Off attendees and organizers for donations to pool activities and pool repairs. Whereas the city thanks the Nelsonville Community Foundation Fund, and whereas the city thanks the Rocky Community Improvement Fund, and whereas the city thanks the Baird Brothers Company Foundation, and whereas the city thanks the attendees and organizers of the Chili Cook-Off event. Now therefore be it ordained by the council of the city of Nelsonville, Ohio, that the city accepts the generous donation from the Baird Foundation of $2,313.34 to repair the pool pump. The city accepts the generous donation from the Rocky Community Improvement Fund of $2,313.33 to repair the pool pump. The city accepts the generous donation from the Nelsonville Community Foundation Fund of $2,313.33 to repair the pool pump. The city accepts the generous donation from the Chili Cook-Off attendees and organizers of $1,371 to the pool. This ordinance shall be in full force and effect at the earliest moment permitted by law, duly enacted by council on second reading the 9th day of August, 2021.
Okay, any council discussion? All right, motion to adopt?
Motion to adopt.
Second.
Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
Ms. Grant?
Yes.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Sherman?
Yes.
Okay. Ordinance 55-21, second reading.
An ordinance changing the income tax split effective October 1st, 2021, and declaring an emergency. Whereas the city desires to change the income tax split to 88, 10, and 2% effective October 1st, 2021. Now therefore be it ordained by the council of the city of Nelsonville, Ohio, that effective October 1st, 2021, the income tax shall be divided 88% to the general fund and 10% to the capital improvements fund and 2% to the recreation fund. This ordinance shall be in full force at the earliest date provided by law, duly enacted by council on second reading the 9th day of August, 2021.
Any council discussion on this?
Motion to adopt.
Second.
Grant?
Yes.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Duffy?
Yes. All right. To ordinance 57-21, get someone to introduce it.
I'll introduce it.
An ordinance authorizing the city manager, Scott Frank, to prepare and submit an application to participate in the Ohio Water and wastewater infrastructure grant program and to execute contracts as required. Whereas the water and wastewater infrastructure grant provides financial assistance to political subdivisions for capital improvements to improve access to clean drinking water and wastewater infrastructure. And whereas the city of Nelsonville, Athens County, Ohio, is planning to make capital improvements to Nelsonville 2021 water main river crossing replacement. And whereas the infrastructure improvement herein above described is considered to be a priority need for the community and is a qualified project under the Water and Wastewater Infrastructure Grant Program. Now therefore be it ordained by the Council of the City of Nelsonville, Athens County, Ohio as follows. That City Manager Scott Frank is hereby authorized to apply to the Ohio Department of Development for funds as described above. That City Manager Scott Frank is authorized to enter into any agreements as may be necessary and appropriate for obtaining this financial assistance. This ordinance is being passed as an emergency measure pursuant to Ohio Revised Code 731.30 because the immediate passage of the ordinance is necessary so that the funds can be timely applied for, and this ordinance shall be in full force and effect upon its adoption. Duly enacted by council on first reading under suspension of the rules the 9th day of August 2021.
Any council discussion on this?
What was the number on that ordinance?
57.
57-2.
No, I wrote it on there, so I don't think it came through.
Okay, must have an old agenda, it's 5721 with staffing on the agenda I printed out, so. I
Oh,
must be
okay,
behind the times.
okay.
My apologies.
No, you're fine. Any council discussion on the matter? Motion to suspend?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Dumpy?
Yes.
Grant? Yes.
Move to adopt.
Second that.
I've got a question for you, move to adopt. Does this need an emergency clause on it so I don't have to wait 30 days?
I think it qualifies when we've got this, okay? Take a look.
I just make a motion to add an emergency clause to the ordinance so there's no question.
That's fine. Just say number 3,
Yeah.
ordinance is being passed as emergency measure.
That doesn't change it.
No, it doesn't change it, it just puts it up in the top of the header and declare it an emergency.
All right, well, we suspended the rules, so what do we,
Just need a second to add the emergency clause, correct?
I'll second that.
Okay. Okay. We'll vote on that then. Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
yes,
Mr. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Dumpy?
Yes.
Ms. Grant? Yes. Mr. Booth?
Yes.
No motion to adopt.
second,
Mr. Smith?
Yep.
Mr. Taylor?
yes,
Mr. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Dumpy?
Yes.
Ms. Grant? Yes. Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Okay. Ordinance 58-21, I need someone to introduce it, please.
I'll introduce it.
Thank you.
An ordinance authorizing the city manager, Scott Frank, to prepare and submit an application to participate in the Ohio Water and Wastewater Infrastructure Grant Program and to execute contracts as required. Whereas the water and wastewater infrastructure grant provides financial assistance to political subdivisions for capital improvements to improve access to clean drinking water and wastewater infrastructure. And whereas the city of Nelsonville, Athens County, Ohio is planning to make capital improvements to Phase 3 regional collection system improvements. And whereas the infrastructure improvement herein above described is considered to be a priority need for the community and is a qualified project under the Water and Wastewater Infrastructure Grant Program. Now therefore be ordained by the Council of the City of Nelsonville, Athens County, Ohio as follows. that City Manager Scott Frank is hereby authorized to apply to the Ohio Department of Development for funds as described above. That City Manager Scott Frank is authorized to enter into any agreements as may be necessary and appropriate for obtaining this financial assistance. This ordinance is being passed as an emergency measure pursuant to Ohio Revised Code 731.30 because the immediate passage of the ordinance is necessary so that the funds can be timely applied for, and this ordinance shall be in full force and effect upon its adoption. Duly enacted by council on first reading under suspension of the rules the 9th day of August 2021.
Any council discussion on this matter? Motion to suspend?
So moved. Second.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Dumpy?
Yes.
Ms. Grant?
Yes.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yeah,
Do we need to add an emergency clause on this too?
I guess I wanted to ask Bob that, like, if it's in the ordinance, do we have to pass a separate emergency vote?
No, I like the
What I
idea.
was talking about, in the charter, it says in the preamble, you're supposed to have it and declare it emergency, and that was all,
Doesn't change.
Yeah, I was
anything.
just asking, like,
yeah.
in the, you're saying at the top, it should say.
What I'm gonna do
declare
next
it
and
time
declare
is
it
make sure
emergency.
it's emergent, it just clarifies it.
So
You can
Yeah.
look
what
at
we
it
really need to
quicker.
do is just amend the ordinance at the top.
Yeah.
Okay.
But these are not spending money, these are just applying for grants, I
Right.
don't think it matters.
Right, okay.
I was
just
concerned about the one that was spending money, the auditors that would come in and say,
It's nice to have a title.
Yes,
We'll
okay.
make sure that's done.
Yeah,
next
we'll just
time.
make sure we amend, if there's any more, we'll amend them
yeah,
tonight
fine.
before we read them.
All right.
So we don't need it.
You don't need it.
Okay.
It's not
All right.
spending money.
You got a motion to suspend, so, motion to adopt.
I'll move
moved.
the motion.
Second.
Mr. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Dumpy?
Yes.
Ms. Grant? Yes. Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
yes,
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Right. Ordinance 59-21. Need someone to introduce it, please?
Honor, you said.
An ordinance authorizing city manager Scott Frank to prepare and submit an application to participate in the Ohio Public Works Commission State Capital Improvement and/or Local Transportation Improvement Program and to execute contracts as required. Whereas the State Capital Improvement Program and the Local Transportation Improvements Program both provide financial assistance to political subdivisions for capital improvements to public infrastructure. And whereas the city of Nelsonville, Athens County, Ohio is planning to make capital improvements to paving 2022 project, and whereas the infrastructure improvement herein above described is considered to be a priority need for the community and is a qualified project under the OPWC program. Now therefore be ordained by the council of the city of Nelsonville, Athens County, Ohio as follows. That city manager Scott Frank is hereby authorized to apply to the OPWC for funds as described above. That city manager Scott Frank is hereby authorized to enter into any agreements as may be necessary and appropriate for obtaining this financial assistance. This ordinance is being passed as an emergency measure pursuant to Ohio Revised Code 731.30 because the immediate passage of the ordinance is necessary so that the funds can be timely applied for, and this ordinance shall be in full force and effect upon its adoption. Duly enacted by council on first reading under suspension of the rules the 9th day of August 2021.
Any council discussion on this matter? Okay. Motion to suspend?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Dumpy?
Yes.
Ms. Grant?
Yes.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
yes,
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Sherman?
Yes.
Motion to adopt?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Grant? Yes. Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Dumpy?
Yes.
No, I have some.
60-21. I need someone to introduce it, please.
I'll introduce it.
Thank you.
An ordinance authorizing the city manager to accept multiple police cruisers. Whereas 2 police cruisers have been totaled in the past 2 weeks, whereas 3 police cruisers are to be or have been purchased by ARPA funds and by 2021 capital funds. Whereas 1 police cruiser has been donated to the Nelsonville Police Department, and whereas the Nelsonville Police Department is in need of replacement cruisers. Now therefore be it ordained by the council of the city of Nelsonville, Athens County, Ohio as follows. That city manager Scott Frank is hereby granted blanket approval to accept multiple police cruisers. This ordinance is being passed as an emergency measure pursuant to Ohio Revised Code 731.30 because the immediate passage of the ordinance is necessary so that the damaged cruisers can be replaced immediately in order for Nelsonville Police Department to perform their everyday duties, and this ordinance shall be in full force and effect upon its adoption. Duly enacted by council on first reading under suspension of the rules the 9th day of August 2021.
Bob, I have another question. Shouldn't number 1 say without bid?
Should say without bid. It does say without bid on here. Take a look.
Number 1?
Yeah.
It says the city manager Scott Frank is hereby granted blanket approval to accept multiple police cruisers.
To accept them. Is that the one? Yeah.
Yeah, without bid. In other words, would be waiving the bidding requirement.
I think you should add that. I don't have a problem with that also.
So should we amend to add without bid, but also amend in the title under emergency?
Correct.
Correct.
So I make a motion to amend the title to add under emergency and in item 1 to add without bid.
Second that.
Mr. Booth,
Yes.
Ms. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Taylor,
Yes.
Mr. Sherman.
Yes.
Mr. Duffy.
Yes.
Ms. Grant. Yes.
Motion to suspend,
Second.
right?
Yeah.
That's next.
You're doing it.
I'm getting lost here.
Maybe 2. Who seconded?
I did.
Yes, whatever.
You did? Okay. Ms. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Taylor,
Yes.
Mr. Sherman.
Yes.
Mr. Duffy.
Yes.
Ms. Grant. Yes. And, yeah, I
Oh,
almost
yeah,
started with
I
you.
didn't hear you.
Bring her on the road.
Now we need
Did
a
I?
Need a motion to adopt.
motion to adopt.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Smith. All right, Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Taylor,
Yes.
Mr. Sherman.
Yes.
Mr. Duffy.
Yes.
Ms. Grant. Yes. Mr. Booth.
Yes.
Ms. Jones.
Yes.
I'd like to thank Brooklyn Heights for the donation of the cruiser.
Absolutely.
Anybody else donate cruisers?
Yes, we likely will get another one this Friday from the State Highway Patrol up north, and then we have another one coming from a small department over between Dayton and Cincinnati, which is about 2 weeks out. And they're in the process of pulling their stuff out of it now.
That's
Great
terrific.
news.
I'll be in Dayton the week after next. If you need someone to drive it back, let me know.
Yeah, we'll do.
Seriously. I'll be in Madisonville the 18th.
Appreciate it.
I don't have to listen to Angie cry all the way home.
We're on TV.
Yep.
She's not watching. She doesn't like me that much. She's crying because she has to ride with me.
All right, ordinance 61-21. Need someone to introduce?
I'll introduce it.
Thank you.
An ordinance authorizing the purchase of 3 police cruisers for the police department, in which 2 are to be paid out of ARPA money and 1 is to be paid out of 2021 capital improvement police department funds, and declaring an emergency. Whereas 2 police cruisers have been totaled in the past several weeks, whereas the Nelsonville Police Department is in need of replacement cruisers. Now therefore be it ordained by the council of the city of Nelsonville, Athens County, Ohio as follows. Thank you. That city manager Scott Frank and city auditor are authorized to purchase 3 new police cruisers for the police department for $55,000 apiece. The bidding process, as required under Article 8, Section 8.05 of the City of Nelsonville's charter has been obviated on an emergency basis. 2 of the police cruisers shall be purchased with ARPA money totaling $110,000. 1 of the police cruisers shall be purchased with capital money for $55,000. That city manager Scott Frank and city auditor are authorized to enter into any agreements as may be necessary and appropriate for obtaining this financial assistance. This ordinance is being passed as an emergency measure pursuant to Ohio Revised Code 731.30 because the immediate passage of the ordinance is necessary so that the damaged cruisers can be replaced immediately in order for the Nelsonville Police Department to perform their everyday duties, and this ordinance shall be in full force and effect upon its adoption. Duly enacted by council on first reading under suspension of the rules on the 9th day of August, 2021.
We need to add emergency to that.
It's on there.
It's on there.
That's on
Is it
there?
not?
Okay.
I had a question, and I know that, they come with the police white bars, but, radios and computers and stuff like that, we still have to.
So this should almost incorporate all of it. So the base price of the cruiser is just about 40,000, and then it's 11,000-ish to equip it with the cage and the light and sirens, all that other stuff. And then the radios are typically $3,500. However, there's a significant discount. We're waiting on the final price on those to come in. And then the last one would be the computers, which we're not sure what route we want to go with those just yet. But and then the other thing too is Statewide Board, who does all our stuff, has 2 radios that they're bringing down tomorrow. That if they'll work for us, they're going to donate those to us, which will also save us cost there as well.
Cause I know we're getting three donated cruisers, we'll have to put radios in those, we take out of our old ones, but.
Yes, sir. And right now, for the time being, we're okay because the guys all have portables. So it's not stopping us from using the car, but it is something we need to fix. And with the 55,000 each, we should be able to encompass all those.
Alright.
Also, there is a, tell me about the possible.
Yeah, so the refund of the money, so I contacted the governor's office when this hit, because I really didn't know what else to do at that point when we were down to 1 cruiser. So Mr. Andy Wilson reached out to me and he helped me coordinate a couple things. He found the verbiage where we could use ARPA funds to purchase the cruisers immediately. And he talked about another distribution that he's got to meet with Governor DeWine about next month. So in that additional distribution, we could potentially receive all the money back for all 3 cruisers. There's specific line items in the guidance that talks about gun violence. And with three of our last 4 crashes, because it's still during COVID when we crashed the last one, they indirectly tie back to gun violence. So when Officer Dolly was responding, it was shots fired. Then there's the one that Officer Tracy was involved in. And then there was also another one last spring, right after I started and shortly after COVID started, where Officer Yoakum was in a pursuit and slid across, hit a fire hydrant, totaling the car. But the person they were after was a murder suspect who ended up getting convicted for murder and still in jail. So.
You were able to find police cruisers?
I did. I found 3 unicorns. So 7 of them to be exact. Lebanon Ford had 7 of them sitting on their lot that they didn't follow through on their order. So ours are already a statewide being put together. We
Is
might
that
have,
under the state bid?
it is.
We didn't have to worry about doing away with the bid.
So, well, so yeah, it is under state bid, but we have 3 of the 7 that they had. They are being transported to statewide. They might be there, but it's possible we have our first cruiser the end of this week.
Good.
Will there be an insurance settlement also on that?
There is, so the insurance was here today. They looked at the cruiser that we have here on premise. It is definitely total. They don't have their numbers together yet on that one, and they're still working on Officer Tracy's to see what they're gonna do with that one.
Could we potentially use that money for the computers and radios and things like
You
that?
could, it'll come back in and go into the general fund is how the other
I wondered how that.
2 that we've totaled, went, and then, from there goes wherever for the most part.
Gotcha. Thank you.
I have a
Good work.
Sure.
If we're getting 3 donated and buying 3, does that mean we'll have like an extra or?
We will be 100% sufficient at that point, better than we've ever been before. As far as, what I'm trying to say, our fleet will be the biggest it's been since I know of.
Probably what we should do after that in the years to come is every year replace one cruiser. And that way you don't get a cruiser that's 4 and 5 years old.
100% correct. So the one we just got was in phenomenal shape, and I believe it's a 15, and very high mileage, but very well taken care of. The one the troopers are giving us, I believe, is a 16, and the same goes with the other one getting from over by Dayton. They all have 100,000 miles on them, but they've been maintained very nicely, and so far, no problems. Ideally, folks will be able to have their own cruiser assigned to them now, just because of the unfortunate circumstances. That wasn't the goal by any means, but if that's the case, hopefully we can reduce the amount of miles that we put on them as well, so they're not being ran around the clock by, two different people. So, and then in addition to what Greg said, absolutely for fleet management, start budgeting for one every year or so.
We've been doing that, haven't
Yes.
we?
So,
Thank you.
Good work, Scott, thank you.
All right, motion to suspend?
I'll move to suspend.
Second,
Mr. Taylor?
yes.
Mr. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Dumpy?
Yes.
Ms. Grant? Yes. Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes,
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
I'll move to adopt.
Second,
Mr. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Dumpy?
Yes.
Ms. Grant? Yes. Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes,
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
yes.
All right. Ordinance 62-21, need someone to introduce it, please?
I'll introduce it.
Thank you. Got me.
Oh, before you read this, Scott, are you gonna do a promotional exam on this?
I'm sorry, say that
Are you
again?
gonna do a promotional exam?
Yes, absolutely. So I don't know if it's cart before horse or horse before cart, but we can't do
Yeah.
anything.
Can we say on number one to hire a provisional sergeant for no longer than 6 months? Because if someone serves longer than 6 months, ORC makes them permanent.
I know the intent
Yeah.
is to not even hire them until all the testing's done.
Okay.
So do all the testing and then pick one from there to promote. So
We're
we're,
gonna test in a month or two, wasn't it?
right, yeah. So there's no, I guess what I'm trying to say, there's no intent to promote somebody before
The testing.
the testing is done.
It probably should still say provisional sergeant.
It's-
did we vote on this at the last meeting, or we just discussed it at the
We
last
just
meeting?
discussed it.
Okay, I remember we've had this conversation before.
We did discuss that. It was
Okay.
in the Chief Hitch. We
Yeah.
talked about that.
It's been a month.
Okay.
It's been a month.
And a lot.
So we don't have to go through the motion. Can we add provisional sergeant to the number one? Bob, would that be all right with you?
I think we still have to make a motion to amend.
Make a motion to amend.
Well, if we do it before it's read, it don't matter, but I'll make that motion to add provisional to the word in front of sergeant.
For sergeant, okay.
I'll second that.
Mr. Dumpy?
Yes.
Ms. Grant? Yes. Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Sherman?
Yes.
Motion to suspend the rules?
Motion to suspend.
Second.
I don't think it's been read yet.
Hasn't been read yet.
Oh, it hasn't been read yet. Oh, that got lost.
What's in that?
An ordinance authorizing promotion of one officer to sergeant and authorizing the hiring of a conditional provisional officer. Whereas the staffing in the police department needs to be modified, and whereas the police department needs to hire a conditional provisional officer on an emergency basis. Now therefore be it ordained by the council of the city of Nelsonville, Athens County, Ohio as follows. The city manager, Scott Frank, shall be granted the authority to promote one officer to sergeant, provisional sergeant. The city manager, Scott Frank, shall be granted the authority to hire a conditional provisional officer immediately. This ordinance is being passed as an emergency measure pursuant to Ohio Revised Code 731.30, because the immediate passage of the ordinance is necessary so that the change in staffing can allow for the Nelsonville Police Department to perform their everyday duties in an effective manner and this ordinance shall be in full force and effect upon its adoption. Duly enacted by council on first reading under suspension of the rules the 9th day of August, 2021.
Any council discussion on this matter?
I just want to make sure everybody understands that this is two different actions. One is to promote for sergeant, and then the other one is, as soon as we find someone to bring on provisionally to fill in where we're at. So it's two different actions. Just make sure everybody understood that.
Yeah, probably at the next meeting, bring in the staffing ordinance to change the staffing.
I guess, so will I be able
And just
to,
spell it out, what the staffing will be.
do I need to do that before hiring somebody provisionally?
No,
just
no,
for the
because
sergeant.
you have the person there you have the position open, but I think we took the sergeant's position out of the staffing.
That's what you need to step.
So we need to get the sergeant staffing back, or the sergeant position back in.
Absolutely.
We actually had that conversation, if you remember, with the chief about that, but he wasn't ready yet, so,
Yeah.
for
Yes.
that, so.
Appreciate it.
Motion to suspend.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Grant? Yes. Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Shorten?
Yes.
Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
Ms. Grant? Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Okay.
Ordinance 63-21, I need someone to introduce it, please.
I'll introduce.
Says it needs to be introduced by all council members. is that
No,
correct?
I think it's been copied and pasted from somewhere.
Oh,
So-
okay.
This our opioid, yeah.
It's, because actually it should say, instead of saying mayor, it should be city manager.
Okay, I wondered about that one.
Yeah.
This has been copied and pasted 3 different times.
Yeah.
So who introduced it?
No, oh, I'll introduce it.
Okay. Now let's see how this goes.
Okay.
An
Good luck.
ordinance authorizing the city manager to accept the material terms of the One Ohio subdivision settlement pursuant to the One Ohio Memorandum of Understanding and consistent with the terms of the July 21st, 2021 National Opioid Settlement, and to sign the One Ohio subdivision participation form and declaring an emergency. Whereas the city of Nelsonville, Ohio, hereinafter referred to as the city, is a municipal entity formed and organized pursuant to the Constitution and laws of the state of Ohio. And whereas the people of the state of Ohio and its communities have been harmed by misfeasance, nonfeasance, and malfeasance committed by certain entities within the opioid pharmaceutical supply chain, and whereas the state of Ohio, through its attorney general, and certain local governments, through their elected representative and council, are separately engaged in litigation seeking to hold opioid pharmaceutical supply chain participants accountable for the damage caused by their misfeasance, nonfeasance, and malfeasance. And whereas the state of Ohio, through its governor and attorney general, and its local governments, share a common desire to abate and alleviate the impacts of the misfeasance, nonfeasance, and malfeasance throughout the state of Ohio. And whereas the state and its local governments, subject to completing formal documents effectuating the parties' agreements, have drafted the One Ohio Memorandum of Understanding, or MOU, relating to the allocation and the use of the proceeds of any potential settlements described. And whereas the MOU has been collaboratively drafted to maintain all individual claims while allowing the state and local governments to cooperate in exploring all possible means of resolution. And whereas this council understands that an additional purpose of the MOU is to create an effective means of distributing any potential settlement funds obtained under the MOU between the state of Ohio and local governments in a manner and means that would promote an effective and meaningful use of the fund in abating the opioid epidemic throughout Ohio, as well as to permit collaboration and explore an earlier resolution of the opioid litigation against opioid pharmaceutical supply chain participants. And whereas nothing in the MOU binds any party to a specific outcome, but rather any resolution under the MOU requires acceptance by the state of Ohio and the local governments. And whereas the settlement proposal is being presented to the state of Ohio and local governments by distributors of Amerisource Bergen, Cardinal, and McKesson, collectively known as settling distributors, to resolve governmental entity claims in the state of Ohio using the structure of the One Ohio MOU, and consistent with the material terms of the July 21st, 2021 proposed National Opioid Distributor Settlement Agreement, which settlement proposal is summarized in Exhibits 1 and 2 attached here to and incorporated herein by reference. And whereas this council wishes to agree to the material terms of the proposed National Opioid Distributor Settlement Agreement with the settling distributors, the proposed settlement. Be it ordained by the council of the city of Nelsonville, Ohio. One, the mayor, city manager, is hereby authorized to accept and agree to the material terms of the proposed settlement as summarized in Exhibits 1 and 2 and pursuant to the terms of the One Ohio MOU, and to sign the One Ohio subdivision participation form on behalf of the city of Nelsonville, a copy of which is attached hereto as Exhibit 3 and incorporated herein by reference. Section 2, it is found and determined that all formal actions of this council concerning and relating to the passage of this ordinance were adopted in open meetings of this council, and that all deliberations of this council and any of its committees that resulted in such formal action were in meetings open to the public and in compliance with all legal requirements. Section 3, this ordinance shall be an emergency measure necessary for the preservation of the health, welfare, and safety of the residents of the city of Nelsonville, Ohio, to ensure prompt pursuit of funds to assist in abating the opioid epidemic throughout Ohio, and it shall be in full force and effect upon its passage and approval by the city manager.
Any council discussion on this?
So what are we gonna be able to use this money for?
It's, what, 36,000 over 18 years is $2,000 a year.
Oh. That's
You
barely
need,
worth your time reading
We're
that.
gonna have to put some thought into this.
Yeah, you might need 2 signatures on
Do
that.
we need
check.
to suspend the rules?
I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because
I
it's
think that-
declaring an emergency.
Emergency, and it says it.
Well,
Motion to suspend?
Second.
Mr. Booth,
Yes.
Ms. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
yes.
Mr. Taylor,
Yes.
Mr. Sherman,
Yes.
Mr. Duffy,
Yes.
Ms. Grant.
Yes.
Motion to adopt?
So moved.
Second. Sorry, keep talking. Susan gave the
Ms.
disapproval.
Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Taylor,
Yes.
Mr. Sherman.
Yes.
Mr. Duffy.
Yes.
Ms. Grant.
Yes.
Mr. Booth.
Yes.
All right.
Appreciate.
Can we continue on, Mr. Booth?
My apologies. Please allow me to,
We were spending the money.
All right.
I'm sure that'll cover all the problems that are going
By
on
two-
in our.
Yeah, no doubt. Ordinance 64-21. Can someone introduce it?
I'll introduce it.
Thank you.
An ordinance temporarily amending the wastewater treatment plant staff ordinance authorizing the city manager Scott Frank to hire a second operator of record until September 15th, 2021 on an emergency basis. Whereas the staffing in the wastewater treatment plant needs to be temporarily modified, and whereas the wastewater treatment plant needs to immediately and temporarily hire a second operator of record until September 15th, 2021 on an emergency basis. Now therefore be it ordained by the council of the city of Nelsonville, Adams County, Ohio as follows. The city manager, Scott Frank, shall be granted the authority to immediately hire a second operator of record on a temporary basis. This temporary second operator of record shall be employed until September 15th, 2021. This ordinance is being passed as an emergency measure pursuant to Ohio Revised Code 731.30, because the immediate passage of the ordinance is necessary so that the change in staffing can allow for wastewater treatment plant can continue to operate without delay, and this ordinance shall be in full force and effective on its adoption. Duly enacted by council on first reading under suspension of the rules the 9th day of August, 2021.
I have a question on this one.
Go ahead.
Bob, are we gonna have to do another staffing ordinance, come September 15th, or because it says temporary basis, will that basically dissolve as of
It's up to you guys to decide, which does say temporary, so it just means you don't have to do it. If you wanna do staffing, you always can come back in and do it at that point in time.
Probably just next meeting, clean both of them up with staffing.
You could do that.
What's the importance on the 15th?
Phil resigned,
That's when-
that's his last day, so.
Yeah,
this will
so,
give us a
so then
little
it'll
bit
go
of
back to just one operator of record, right? So
Right.
Then we don't have,
Yeah, the reason why I'm asking, because if we have a staffing ordinance that says we have 2 operators, and we would be required to fill the other one after a certain period of time, within a certain period of time.
But it's got the end date
But it's-
built into
But
it.
that's what I was hoping, if
Right.
we didn't have, if it has that temporary on it, that it
It's
would end.
temporary and you have an end date, so.
Okay, so we
you need to-
technically
you wanna
would
clean it
have
up, you
to,
can.
Yeah.
okay.
So one question I do have, and I just thought of it right before. So as far as pay goes, it's not a union position, so therefore it's not set in writing exactly what the pay is. So it's my understanding you folks would have to set the pay rate. Should I match Phil's rate or?
Well,
Maybe
let's do
separate.
that with, when we clean up the, staffing ordinance at the next meeting we have, just whatever you negotiate with whoever you are, have him put that in the ordinance, would be fine with me.
Should we go by experience?
yeah, that's what I would
He
think.
has a
Just-
significant amount.
You already have some in mind.
Yeah, we got the guy. It's just a matter of we have our final discussion with him this Friday.
Is it possible to, how we've been doing step ups with a lot of our newer employees, where they have, they start in at a certain rate, and over time they step up, that way we're not
Well-
necessarily going for the bottom dollar.
Absolutely.
One of the problems with that might be though, these guys that have this license come at a premium.
Yeah,
So, I mean, especially if you get somebody that's good, you can, if you have that license, you can pretty much write your own ticket with a bunch of municipalities. So I'd say you let Scott negotiate the pay and then bring it back to the finance committee or council or whatever. And at the next meeting we have, clean it up, because you don't want to lose somebody that's really good and has a really good licensure to somebody else. Do you agree with that, Scott, or?
I do. So I,
When is your meeting?
my last one was Friday. I need to, meaning, or.
I guess to see that we could have a finance after, when you come up with a number, yes.
Yeah, that's fine.
So in other words, we're just saying, let Scott do his job, negotiate it, come to finance and see where we're at.
Right, because we don't want to lose a good man to somebody else that's paying more.
This could very easily become the highest paying job in the city. Not this time around, hopefully. I think we got it under control. These are $150,000 jobs just right up the road. So,
Yeah,
because
you
the
can,
licenses are.
if you're willing to move, you can write your own ticket with that license.
Well, we'll see what it is and what
Yeah.
we're paying now, what the difference is.
Yeah, sure. No, we don't have that kind of money. That's correct.
Mr. Sapping, did you have a question?
Yeah, could I just ask, because of the timing, because council's not meeting next
We're
meeting, right?
supposed to not have a second meeting unless we need it, absolutely.
We could have a
He-
short
I guess
emergency if
the
we need
problem
to.
I'm envisioning is this person would need a paycheck before council met again. So would council be okay with me beginning to pay that paycheck before you've met on his salary, or?
Well, let's make a motion that you can pay him up to what Phil's making.
Yeah.
And then we'll bring an ordinance in later, but that'll be your discretion. Would that be good?
I definitely think that it should get us started and get him here before Phil leaves.
If we have to bring an ordinance in later on, everybody agrees that we just made a motion that allow Scott to pay because we have a pay ordinance for that amount, for that position right now.
Yes, okay. Just a point of order, the next meeting would be the 23rd. Not having that in August, is that correct?
Well, we gotta decide that to go to the order.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because we
The next
typically-
meeting after that
Typically
would
don't
be,
have one in July and
We typically don't have a second one.
second one in August.
okay, good.
Yeah.
I'm the new guy.
You're the new guy.
We'll make a motion when we get to go to order.
Sometimes we end up having them
I
anyway.
understand.
Yeah, so-
Okay.
The council president can always call a special meeting even if we.
We're having one tomorrow. Okay,
You need a point of order, is always a point of order, Mr. President.
I understand.
Dan, take a lap.
Tony could show.
Did we?
Okay, so a motion to suspend?
Motion to suspend, yes. Motion to suspend.
Second?
We had a motion.
We had a motion to
Oh,
allow
okay.
Scott to write.
Oh,
Okay, so motion to amend,
We have a
Right.
motion on the floor to allow Scott
Yeah.
to pay the existing rate that is already in,
for that position.
for the position. So that is, I will second that motion
So you,
Until September.
until
15th.
September 15th.
all right. Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Taylor,
Yes.
Mr. Sherman,
Yes,
Mr. Dumpy,
Yes.
Ms. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Booth,
Yes.
Ms. Jones.
yes.
Now we have a motion to suspend.
So moved. Second?
Mr. Taylor,
Yes.
Mr. Sherman,
yes,
Mr. Dumpy.
Yes.
Ms. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Booth,
Yes.
Ms. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Motion to adopt.
So moved.
Second.
Oh,
I'm thinking of you, Susan.
I know you are. Mr. Sherman,
yes,
Mr. Dumpy,
Yes.
Ms. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Booth,
Yes.
Ms. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Taylor.
Yes.
All right. Ordinance 65-21, need someone to introduce it, please?
I'll introduce.
Thank you.
An ordinance amending the 2021 appropriations ordinance to appropriate from the unappropriated balance to the American Rescue Plan Fund, number 925, the following: the sum of $297,000 from the unappropriated balance to the American Rescue Plan Fund, number 925, operating costs. Whereas the appropriations need to be Whereas the appropriations need amended to appropriate from unappropriated balance to the 925 American Rescue Plan funds. Now therefore be it ordained by the council of the city of Nelsonville, Athens County, Ohio as follows. The 2021 appropriations ordinance is amended to appropriate from the unappropriated balance to the American Rescue Plan Fund number 925 the following: the sum of $297,000 from unappropriated balance to American Rescue Plan Fund number 925, operating costs. The total appropriated balance is decreased by said amount. The total appropriations in the American Rescue Plan Fund number 925 are increased by said amount. This ordinance shall be in full force and effect at the earliest moment permitted by law. This ordinance is being passed as an emergency measure pursuant to Ohio Revised Code 731.30. Because the immediate passage of the ordinance is necessary so that the damaged cruisers can be replaced immediately in order for the Nelsonville Police Department to perform their everyday duties, and this ordinance shall be in full force and effect upon its adoption. Duly enacted by council on first reading under suspension of the rules the 9th day of August 2021.
Any council discussion on this matter?
Yeah, what is the $197,000.
Yeah, this is our first distribution, technically from the federal government, but it ran through the state first for the American Rescue Act. So most folks, Rescue Plan Act, I'm sorry. Most folks probably in this room received a stimulus check in March. And that's from that bill. And this is part of the bill or the law that distributes money to local governments.
So it's kind of like a pass-through, you mean, you have to distribute it? and
We do,
receive it?
so the Fed, it comes with guidelines, so the Fed gives this money to municipalities like Nelsonville and says, here's the list of stuff you can spend it on. The Fed's goals generally are economic revitalization, some COVID and first responder provisions, and big push is infrastructure. So if anybody's watched the news, Washington's been obsessed with infrastructure the whole year for good reason. And this bill is pushing a lot of money towards infrastructure as well.
Okay, thank you.
Motion to suspend. So moved. Second.
Mr. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Dumpy?
Yes.
Ms. Grant?
Yes.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes. Move to adopt.
Second.
Mr. Dumpy?
Yes.
Ms. Grant?
Yes.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yeah.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Sherman?
Yes.
Last one. You're almost ready for this?
I'm doing-
The
I'll
last
do
one.
my best.
All right, Heartbreak Hill. Ordinance 66-21, need someone to introduce it, please?
I'll introduce it.
Thank you.
An ordinance authorizing the city manager, Scott Frank, to execute a contract with Real World Cleaning Services to clean, maintain, and sanitize City Hall and declare an emergency. Whereas it is desirable to sign a contract with Real World Cleaning Services for the cleaning, maintenance, and sanitation of Nelsonville City Hall. Now therefore be it ordained by the council of the city of Nelsonville, Athens County, Ohio as follows. City Manager Scott Frank is authorized to execute the contract with Real World Cleaning Services. The city manager is authorized to expend an amount approved by council for said cleaning, maintenance, and sanitation services. This ordinance is being passed as an emergency measure pursuant to Ohio Revised Code 731.30 because the immediate passage of the ordinance is necessary to timely allow for the cleaning, maintenance, and sanitation of Nelsonville City Hall, and this ordinance shall be in full force and effect upon its adoption. Duly enacted by council on first reading under suspension of the rules the 9th day of August 2021.
Any council discussion on this matter?
This is something new, correct?
Oh, yours?
Is it with COVID money or what, like,
I don't think so,
I mean,
Or
why
com-
did it come about right now, I guess?
because we haven't had meetings in quite some time, and the place is disgusting, so,
Who cleaned it before?
it really wasn't clean before.
It was never clean.
Every now and again, we would get interns
It
in
was
here.
never cleaned.
No, I said every now and again, we would get interns.
I saw
That's
Becky
interesting.
clean them once.
Nobody
It-
cleaned it.
It could, I mean, sanitation, the purchase agreement does, the purchase agreement or the contract does state some COVID sanitation procedures. I mean,
Yeah, I would bet my life that you can use the COVID money to pay for cleaning.
Yeah.
up.
With COVID, money was very specific. The only thing I don't know is with ARPA, if that language came under ARPA as well. I haven't made it all the way through the ARPA stuff, but definitely under COVID, it does fit, but not, I don't know if it transfers on the ARPA or not.
Who is Real World Cleaning Solutions?
I have to defer to you, because you,
it's one of the closer, the actual commercial cleaning companies. They're based in Logan.
I know where they're at.
The owner is a young guy who ran for mayor there, I think. And they have customers all through Nelsonville and came highly recommended, so we asked for them to put a bid in. Came
How
out actually better than we expected, I think.
I guess to a point of clarification, city employees haven't been cleaning it. Every time we have community service or interns, which is sporadic, they always clean it, so. To say it's never been cleaned, I understand what you're saying.
How often will Real World Cleaning
So they have
Solutions come in to clean?
They have two options. One is once a week and the other one's twice a week. The price difference between the one and two times a week is less, or it was $100, I believe. So to have that second day on there for an extra $100 is well worth it, but we could definitely do the once a week at a bare minimum. And that would include everything. That would do the, sanitize over there, in the utilities department, police department. Fire didn't want them touching their stuff, and then the rest of City Hall.
With resurgent of, COVID, Delta virus and all that, it's a good idea.
That was the thinking behind it,
Yeah.
because we don't have steady cleaning of it, rather. So,
So
Do they
what
do
says
windows?
amount to be approved by council, does that mean we don't actually have the amount yet, or? what
We
does
have
that
the
mean?
amount. Yeah, it's the agreement, was $650 for once a week, $650 a month or a week.
I thought it was,
A week? That's a lot.
No, it was a
Yeah,
month,
that's
it was a
pretty-
month, I'm
I
sorry.
was
getting ready to say,
sign me
I can clean.
Yeah.
I've seen your truck.
I'll clean
I'm
for
not
less.
clean.
Sorry. Let's clear the record of the minutes. It was a month, my mistake. And then it was 800 for twice. So for twice a week, $150 difference is,
And they'll clean the bathrooms
yes.
and
sanitize.
sanitize and then, and
All
still
office
like,
space.
$750 a month for twice a week.
We'll try it. If it doesn't work, we can always
You can always change. Yeah, that's.
I
change.
think it's attached to your guys'.
Once a month should be enough if
I don't know
it's
my computer.
been like zero.
If you have some of the people that's running in and out of the police department, you want it sanitized.
Yeah. I'd say twice a
No,
week.
didn't the
Yeah.
fire department buy some kind of sanitation
They just
thing?
We have
that,
one.
yeah, that clears the air and everything else, absolutely. I mean, you just put it in here and atomizes.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's a good idea.
I agree.
I'm not opposed to
I
it,
think
I'm
it's
just-
a
I was
good
just
idea, I
asking.
think we just need it once a week, though,
Once a month.
No,
once a week.
once a week.
I mean, it's $150 difference a month between once a week and twice a week.
For twice the clean.
Twice a week is.
I'd say twice a week.
And our poor bathrooms get kind of dirty.
Oh, there.
Yeah, that's, that kind of,
They're
it's actually
public
like really
restrooms.
like kind of gross that they haven't been getting.
And it was just bleached a week and a half ago.
It's
not.
I've used them and no one is like worried.
Well, let's give it a try, and if it doesn't work out, we'll change our mind.
There you go.
Yes, Sister Company, the wall wide in her team.
Okay, any more council discussion?
Move to suspend.
Second that.
Ms. Grant, so what are we voting on, the once or twice a week?
I think we're voting on the suspension.
Voting on the suspension.
Yes.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
Motion to adopt.
This is the second, this is the twice a week. I think.
Okay.
I'll second that.
And it's for the twice a week?
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
Ms. Grant?
No.
Next meeting, I want to see that window cleaned.
Yeah, all of them.
All of them.
Yeah, they got a little streakage.
They're bad.
I think they've done
All
that
right.
since I was
It's, all right, city manager's report?
Thank you, council, for passing all these ordinances and getting this caught up. It was a big deal. A lot of these are last minute. First thing I wanted to talk about was the climate in City Hall. Right now, it's, a bit dreary to say the least, but, everybody's pushing through it. The team is resilient and, everybody's gonna be okay. So just appreciate it, all the support, just to echo Chief Fitch, what he said, all the support that we've got from the community, other departments. It's been absolutely phenomenal. Clear back to when Officer Tracy was shot and a week later with Officer Dolly. So everybody is doing okay and everybody's gonna get through it. We are shutting down City Hall for services on Wednesday. The services don't begin until 11. However, we'll be involved in prepping and staging, so it just didn't make any sense to open up City Hall at all that day. With that said, moving on to, I want to give you all a Dunville update on sewer. So just to kind of recap, I gotta tell the whole story very quickly. We moved forward a year ago with phase 3 of the sewer project as a unit, which included sewer and Doneville. The reason why we did that is because we were under the understanding that the sewer rights had been given to us by the commissioners. Well, that was not the case, and we just found that out a month ago at the very most. So we did not have permission, and we went through all this stuff to include engineering and everything else to find out we don't have it. So we went and asked the commissioners for permission for their sewer rights, and they have, they stalled because they wanted to get everybody's opinion. We've had 2 public meetings, and then they had their own meeting. I went to their meeting, their commissioner meeting last Tuesday, and asked for a vote because the deadline is the end of this month. And the reality is, even though it's the end of this month, we need to have our information, or our answer to the engineer by the end of this week, because they need time to maneuver and fix anything before submitting. So they did not vote last Tuesday. Tomorrow is their other weekly meeting. If they don't vote then, we're gonna have to move forward without them, unless they have a special meeting by Friday of this week to vote for it. So what that looks like is, right now, we're asking for 4.5 million roughly, and what this would do is drop it down to 1.1 that we would be asking for instead of, because it's roughly 3.4 is.
In other
the
words,
Doneville
if they
share.
don't give us an answer, we're gonna drop the phase 3 part,
All but the
all but the
in-city part.
in-city part.
At least that would be my recommendation to you folks.
Well, I'll make that motion. If we don't get an answer in time for you to file because we don't wanna lose our 1.1 million by waiting too long to file, so I'll make that motion that we take the course of action you've laid out there.
And then again, if they do vote for it, then there'll
Right.
be no change. We've already laid all
Right.
that groundwork out.
Right, I just don't want you to have to wait any longer and then end up putting our 1.1 million in jeopardy. If they want it and they want us to move for them, fine, but I make the motion that we proceed with your plan there.
What time is their meeting?
It either starts at, is it 11 it starts? Yeah,
No,
Mr. Taylor went with me last time, so.
That way you're clear on what your directions are from council when you go to that meeting.
I'll second Mr. Smith's.
Roll call.
Call the roll.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yep.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
Ms. Grant?
Yes,
If you go to that meeting tomorrow, let me know.
I will.
Well, Scott, I think we also ought to know that we don't really have a lot of money to be made for that project, that we offered that as a courtesy, and
Yeah, I
we
don't-
really don't have a dog in the fight. Yeah.
I really don't understand it. It's just, all it's gonna do is increase the property value. You're gonna have.
Well, but I mean, it's nothing that, it's no big windfall of money for us. We was just offering to be good neighbors and that.
Well,
And-
we tried to make that plain to the commissioners,
Yeah.
and they want to explore their options of whether or not they're going to do it themselves or what have you, so.
Which is fine by me. If they want to take that money and apply for that money and do it, awesome.
Yeah, I agree with you, Mr. Dumpy, though, it doesn't make sense. To me, it's a no-brainer. It increases their property values. It makes undevelopable land currently
Developable.
developable, so.
I can tell you that right now, we're trying to find a piece of land to develop for my daughter, and it is rough to find land that you can put a septic system on. We've had our nurse scientist, KO a couple parcels of property already, so it's really,
Couldn't agree more.
yeah.
Well, thank you for that. And then if I don't know if I'll be able to make it to the meeting tomorrow. At bare minimum, I'll have an email to them before their meeting so they know exactly where we all stand. So,
just extra little information on that. I was at the meeting, and it's mainly, they have a lot of questions, not the commissioners, but the people. A lot of questions that they wanted answered. So it wasn't just the commissioners were listening to, and there was a few of them, they had some really good points that all they wanted was answers.
sure, we had 2 public meetings prior to that one. And then, my fellow commissioner down there, not fellow, but, he we were told that we weren't needed there. And, 3 different times. However, I was corrected at the last meeting that was never said. But, either way, I knew about that meeting and I was completely under the, guidance of we weren't wanted there. When I say we, I mean me. So, that's why I wasn't there.
Someone had asked me that I would come, I didn't even know about it, I got there late,
Sure.
I didn't know about it.
Not the one you're in.
Say again?
The one you're in.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. So a lot of their questions was the billing, how does that work? Why do they have to pay the out-of-town rate? And, a lot of the tap fees, they made it, so there was a false assumption there. The tap fees, they were thinking of some crazy number because somebody threw out like $3,000, because I think that's one of the other communities around here, maybe Athens or something. Ours is $300. And then, to surmise it, the biggest issue was they were trying to compare themselves to Murray City, which is completely different. Murray City is Hocking County, and Hocking County ran that project after the EPA forced them to do it. And halfway through the project, the contractor went under. So they had to get somebody else in to come in and clean it up, and it was a mess. The streets were a mess, everything was a mess over in Murray City. But that's what they're comparing themselves to, and which is I mean, I wouldn't be happy if I lived in Murray City either, quite frankly, with the way that turned out. So
By the same token, everything that was being discussed could have been negotiated.
absolutely.
I mean, like on tap fees and things like that, everything being discussed could be, as I said, we were trying to be good neighbors. And if you want it, fine. If you don't want it, just let us know.
Well, and really, unfortunately, the EPA is gonna force them at some point, like they have Murray City. Murray City's been in the same boat for a long time, and the EPA's finally forced them to do it, and they will be forced to do it as well, and they'll probably be at a greater expense than what it's at now.
The county will be wanting,
Well, the county, if the county decides, if they decide they don't wanna do it either, I mean, they're still gonna be forced at some point, to do it, so.
I'm just saying that I don't think the EPA is gonna allow 2 discharge points. So,
It's not gonna get any cheaper than it is right now. And the other part of that was, with ARPA funds available to the township, and then also potentially different sources of ARPA funds that we could apply for in the grant, there's a good chance that none of them would have to pay a connection fee. They would only have a monthly bill. However, until they're ready to take that step forward, that's not even an explorable option.
Balls in their court.
Yep. Is there any more questions on Dunville?
No, sir.
Oh, and to clarify, there was a worry that we were annexing, and I reassured at both meetings I went out, there's 0 intention of annexing, none, so. Cruisers, I think we already went through that. Thank you, council, for that. Like I said, panicked that next day, because that was Chief's biggest worry at that point, because we were down to 1 cruiser and the K9 cruiser, so 2 technically. So now, we got that one immediately. Thank you very much, our folks up north. They are coming down for the funeral, and they will be here as well. But they are outstanding folks and very nice. And same with the other support we have coming. The guys right now, Parade of the Hills, so the utility guys are doing everything they can to clean up for the Parade of the Hills. So Crabtree Field was mowed early this morning, and they'll get one more mow for the game. It looks pretty good now. They're going around cleaning up what they can on the square. Soon they'll be putting snow fence up around the circle in the middle to protect the trees and the plants, just from people trampling on them in the actual center of the square. Plus cleaning up, different parts, cleaning up any hazards that might be along, storm drains or whatever, that could be a tripping hazard. They're also out doing asphalt, or they will be doing more asphalt tomorrow morning. I don't know how many tons of asphalt they've done. It's well over 20 tons since the last meeting. They're putting down asphalt like crazy. So tomorrow they're gonna go out and they're gonna basically go to the parade route and see if they can find any cracks or anything, just to try and get them as smooth as possible. There's nothing we can do about Jefferson Street. So that will remain the way it is. But that is all they're doing. You may have seen on Columbus Street, we didn't rent that machine. It was included with the product to fill those cracks. So you folks have expressed interest in correctly sealing patches and everything else since I started, so we're on it now. They're out there, running the crack sealer. Currently it's broke. The, company, I believe, brought the part today, so it should be back out soon. And the preparation, the biggest one we want to do first is Columbus and Fayette, because those, after Parade of the Hills, we're gonna run, it's called Liquid Road, and it's a really thick sealer with aggregate in it. It adds 5 to 7 years potentially to asphalt life, and I want to seal Columbus Street, Fayette Street, Rocky Boot Way. Just for starters, we will have a 4,000 gallon tanker to go through, so 4,000 gallons to get through, should easily cover those roads, and then from there, we're gonna start doing spots along Canal Street, the aprons that are asphalt before they turn to brick up through there, and try and get it as, protect the asphalt, but try and get it as nice looking as possible. That'll also be the square as well, and then have it all freshly painted. So, the paint last year did not stick very well to the old asphalt. It doesn't, I guess, is what I was found out, especially the concrete, it doesn't stick to it all. And, that's the plan. Then, paving is still on the radar. It's one of those that, so on Mill Street, the project's delayed. That was one of the ordinances you folks read. The reason why it's delayed is at the bottom of Mill Street on Cotner, we found lead joints holding the water lines together. So we got the change order, which you folks just approved, EPA approved it. So now the water line's gonna go down, Cotner and down Short Street as well, clear to, Fort Street. So there'll be a new water line from Fort Street up to the end of Mill.
Nice.
And then, part of the project will be to pave, Mill Street. And then with our funds, I want to pave Cotner, Poling. We got to talk in street committee about Short Street because it's a brick street, you know, what you want to do there. I don't touch bricks without everybody's consensus on that one. And then,
I don't blame you.
so, so that's the plan. And then they're also going to be up at St. John Street, changing the water line up there. And after they're done with there is, I believe I can afford it, but I want to pave St. John Street when they get done putting the water line in up there as well. With that being said, there's going to be a lot of construction in the Meyer and Monroe Street area. It's going to be a mess till next year because there's sewer improvements on that for next year as well. So this year it's going to get tore up for water, but it doesn't make much sense to put it back down correctly until they get done doing the sewer through there. With that said, we hired another operator for the sewer plant. Mr. Zach Fuller, he is coming in as entry level. He's a Nelsonville resident, and he's coming in to be our operator, just a entry level operator. And we're excited to hopefully get him trained up. That is his desire, is to come in and ideally, if everything works out, you know, he would take over for the operator record that we're hiring now in 10 years and stay until he's done. That's what I'm hopeful for. So there's lots of stuff that's happened, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you folks have, but that's all I have for tonight.
Who's inspecting Mill Street? On the construction project, who's inspector on that?
So DLZ is the constructor, so his name is Gene, and Jason is up there periodically watching what
You
they're
maybe
doing.
have, I don't know the facts or anything. I was just talking to a couple residents up there and they were complaining that holes were being left open overnight. I don't, maybe you can just have him address that.
Yeah, there were, but I'd have to double check, because when I saw them, there was snow fencing, but that doesn't mean anything either, so I'll, excuse me, I'll follow up on that, that's easy enough.
Anything else? All right, thank you, Mr. Frank, appreciate it. All right, we are to the good of the order, and Ms. Grant.
Excuse me.
I would just like to say with Parade of the Hills coming up, I know I've said it before, but if anyone has time to volunteer, I'm sure they could still use some help, and I think you can get a hold of them on their website or Facebook page.
Thank you. Anything else? You good? Okay. Mr. Booth?
Just want to thank the Elks in Shauna Frederick. They did a big drive for school supplies for Nelsonville, York, and Trimble. If anybody's, I'm sure everybody's been in the dining room area, the banquet hall room. I was in there Saturday. Every table was filled with school supplies they're donating. They're still accepting for another week or two. So, you know, we thank the Elks for that. Also, you know, obviously with everything that's been going on in the city, the fact that we've got people out there that'll put their lives on the line every day for us, every citizen should be cognizant of that, and hopefully they are, because, you know, they keep us from the bad stuff. And thank God for those people.
Thank you, Mr. Booth. Ms. Jones?
Yes, so a few things. First, obviously condolences to the Dolly family, and our officers and people here in City Hall for, the loss of Officer Dolly last week. I also want to, really recognize Scott, Frank as our city manager, who really stepped up and, dealt with everything, efficiently, getting cruisers, looking for cruisers, making sure that we're, as a city, going to be protected and safe moving forward in a very short amount of time. Just really showed very strong leadership for us as a city. So I think we're very lucky to have him there. The other thing I want to mention is, and recognize as a young woman in the community, Claire Abraham, who has been organizing an event that's going to take place Sunday, the 22nd at the Hive, which is offering like free haircuts and hygiene products for school children here in Nelsonville before they go back to school the next week. And Claire's been, you know, soliciting donations of different things for that. And so if people would like to donate, you can drop things off at the Hive. They're looking for, again, hygiene products for kids. So, you know, razors, shampoo, body wash, deodorant, all of that. I think they'll take cash donations too. And attractions on the square is going to be giving haircuts to kids. So if anybody out there needs their kids to get a haircut, there's a sign up at the Hive. And again, I just really want to recognize Claire for, she's going to be a freshman at the high school, for really spearheading this project. And I think she's showing great leadership and commitment to our community.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Mr. Smith?
Well, first, are we gonna take the second meeting off?
I don't have an issue with it. Does anyone else?
Then I'll make a motion that we cancel the second meeting.
I'll second that motion.
It's already in the charter that we have,
Yeah.
I don't think we need to have.
Is it in the charter?
Yeah, it's in the.
Oh, okay. All right.
I don't think we need a motion.
We have in the past, because some years we've taken it off, and some years we haven't. I just wanted, you know,
I think we,
I'm fine with either way, but,
Okay, so officially no second meeting. Got it.
okay.
All right.
He said Phil's retiring. I want to wish Phil, a happy retirement or whatever he has planned in his life. He's been a long-term, employee of Nelsonville and, holds a lot of licenses and, you know, been a long time servant. I want to wish him and his family good luck in their future endeavors. And thirdly, I think it's all of our fervent prayers that no city employee ever gets hurt again. And at the bottom line is, it's just something that's horrible that happens, and we just want that, if we could somehow pray that our employees stay safe, because it's the most important resource that we have in the city, and also those our employees. So, and prayers to the Dolly family.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Taylor?
I've noticed in the last week, some folks cutting their grass and blowing it into the street. And just want to ask that they don't do that. I have boys that have motorcycles that ride, and I have quite a few friends that ride motorcycles, and it's very dangerous to have grass in the street. I would ask that they not do that. Plus, we have an ordinance against that. But plus, if you live on a brick street, that's why your street
Like glass.
that's why it grows grass there, because you're blowing grass in the street. But so I just ask that people, you know, be respectful of riders, and so they can stay safe. I want to thank all the city employees for standing by each other right now and when they're in need. Scott, I appreciate everything he's done. I know how much he cares about his team and looks after them. And with Parade of Hills coming up this week, I hope they have a successful turnout and hope everybody's safe. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
Bill?
Mr. Sherman, do you have anything good to say?
I was gonna echo off of what Corey said about the Parade of Hills. Hope everybody stays safe and has a good time. It's good to see the people are back out in the public. Thanks for the city workers for keeping the place clean, and I think it goes without saying, everybody has expressed their condolences for the Dolly families and our officers that served with him. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. I would just like to say, the losses that we have had in this community recently really bring to light what's truly important in this world. And, we have a lot of people who disagree with what we do here. But when it really comes down to it, it was nice to see the community come together and set their differences aside for the sake of our community. Our community's had some great losses lately. I'd like to extend my condolences to Scott's family. It's unbelievable. The crash scene was horrible. Something I'll probably never forget. Also, I would like to extend my condolences to Mr. Toy on his loss.
Thank you.
And I just want everyone to realize that, it is bigger than all of us. So, thank you. Okay,
Motion to adjourn?
do we need to go into executive session for anything?
Yes, I would like to.
Okay,
What are we doing?
Like to get in, inviting council members and then later the city manager and city attorney, if that's okay with you, Kenny?
Yeah,
For what purpose?
what are we going in for? We need to state.
Personnel.
okay, motion to go into executive session for ORC 121-22 for personal and legal matters. So how do you want to do this?
Motion?
We will go to the other room. Inviting in, Mr. Frank and Mr. Sappington.
Later.
Just,
What about
is our
Mr.
attorney-
Toy?
is our
And Mr.
attorney-
Toy too. Yes. Okay.
Note the time.
Look at time. Yeah, okay.
8:33.
There's a motion on, make a
Is there
motion.
a second?
I'll second it.
Let's see, where do I go here? Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Taylor,
Yes.
Mr. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Dumpy?
Yes.
Ms. Grant? Yes. Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yeah.
Do you want me to end the live stream now and then?
I think you just leave it on.
Okay.
All right, we're unmuted.
Nice.
All right, here we go. Okay,
Motion to return from executive session.
I'll second that
Note the time.
and, appoint Elizabeth as
Oh, wait.
temporary
Oh,
council
hold
clerk,
9:53.
9:53.
8:53, sorry, I can't tell
on.
time.
8:53,
Probably
out
Okay.
of executive session.
Okay, so Greg made the motion, who seconded?
I did.
Tony? Okay, Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Taylor,
Yes.
Mr. Sherman,
Yes.
Mr. Dumpy?
Yes.
Ms. Grant?
Yes.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Ms. Jones? Yes.
One last thing, we would like to encourage everyone to please donate to the Scott Dolly Fund that is at Nelsonville Home and Savings. We encourage you to go there and do that in person, rather than, as far as I know, there's no GoFundMe authorized account, because there was one set up that was fake.
But you can go through the drive-through or send a
Go through the
check.
drive-through
Yeah.
or send a check in the mail. Highly encourage you to do that. That would be the best thing.
And since we know the parade route, we would encourage people to
I just have,
be there for the parade, for the viewing or his body passing by, and maybe bring a flag and stand out and pay your respects if you can.
Okay? All right, motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Sherman?
yes.
Mr. Dumpy?
Yes.
Ms. Grant?
Yes.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Ms. Jones? Yes. Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Want to give a notice about Mayor's Court?
Oh,
Yeah, Scott, can you just put out a public
Public notice that Mayor's Court will be canceled
tomorrow,
for tomorrow.
Wednesday?
for
It's
Wednesday.
due
Do you
to,
wanna set it for the next Wednesday, or?
no, we'll just go.
2 weeks.
Just do 2 weeks.
So you're gonna have one the week
Well,
we
wait.
don't have a meeting.
Yes.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
so that would be on the 25th.
Yeah, that doesn't change.
All right.
I love Mayor's Court.
I do.
Okay, we're done.
He's not a
Bob is the